And turning it over to Rabbi.
Thank you, Jimmy. So nice to see everyone's faces. And it's like, it feels a little strange because on Shabbat I saw eyes again, right? No mouths and no noses. Yesterday was really sweet in shul. We had some B'nai Mitzvah kids that were up on the bima and helping lead Musaf, and Anne was great, helping me read Torah. I appreciated that. So we're gonna, today is Rosh Chodesh Elul, the new month of Elul. 40 days from now, we will be at Yom Kippur. I shared in the class on Friday that number 40 means something, right, for us? Anybody? What's the 40?
It's 40 years in the desert.
That is one of our 40s. That is, I mean, it's like a full length of time. Anybody remember any other 40s?
Rain
Moshe,
for 40 days and 40
the
nights.
Torah in 40 days and 40 nights.
Yeah, Moshe is up on the mountain for 40 days and for 40 nights, and that's when he gets the Torah, right?
The blood of Noah.
Yeah, that's also. So there's something about this 40. For Yom Kippur purposes, it's the idea is after the golden calf, which could have been the event that God said "Fuya" to us, right? Could have said, "You guys can't handle it. You couldn't handle it for 40 days," you know. And one day we'll study the breaking of the tablets because it's pretty cool text there. But Moshe goes back up the mountain, like Trevor said, a second time. He goes up a second time. He comes down with the second set of tablets. Those tablets like seal our covenant. It says God's still with us. So he goes up, Moshe goes up the mountain. Our tradition teaches today. This is the second time going up. Then 40 days later will be Yom Kippur. He'll come down with a new set of tablets, and that will prove that that we're forgiven for our first faux pas, the golden calf. You know, that thing just jumped out of the fire. They just dropped the gold and it flew out. So that's where we are. And today we're going to look at some selections from the Rambam on Hilchot Tshuva. And before we do, well, can we just share a little bit with each other, like, what are your initial kind of thoughts and where does your mind go with just the word tshuva? What is that word?
Asking for forgiveness to those you have harmed.
All right, so Shoshana says part of tshuva is asking for forgiveness, right? The people that I've not been my best with, that I've didn't show up as well as I could have. And that says?
Returning to the things that are really the most important things.
So a sorry, some kind of apology from Shoshana, but Annette's saying that it's a return. Well, then, right, the word tshuva could mean actually return. It could mean that, but you're saying in a value sense, I think, right? Like to say, I'm going to check in with how I'm living and what I'm doing, and am I actually making choices that lead me to the kind of life that I want, and are my relationships good as a whole, even if I didn't necessarily do something wrong. It's just a time for reflection and reevaluation. Any other like responses to the word tshuva?
I also think return, but I think in the sense of getting back into the high holidays and returning to, you know, shul and our practices and maybe some of the things we sort of loosened up on over, you know, the last couple months with our observance.
Kara, is that right? Am I saying your name right? Yeah. So Kara's saying, yeah, right. There's a way that I look at my habits. I look at my behaviors, right? That I say, have I been investing in the kind of things that I want to be investing in, right? And part of that is certainly can fall in Jewish ritual life, right? It can fall into more specific Jewish ritual things. So we're kind of defining it a little bit about what it is. But what about like in your gut when I say it's the time to do tshuva? Where does that fall in you? Where does it live in you?
Uh-oh, high holidays.
And what's the, okay, so I heard an uh-oh, but what's the uh-oh?
A lot of work to be done, a lot of inner work to be done to prepare Not
Okay,
forget
Meg.
the cleaning and stuff, but the inside. You
That's what I
gotta
was
clean
gonna
the
say.
inside and.
Yeah, I
and-
guess there's never a
Yeah.
time that somebody says, oh, you need to do tshuva when you can't immediately think of some reason why you might need to do tshuva.
Oh, that's because you're a tzaddikus. That's why. That's because you're actually holy and trying. Look, so Shana said, first, because all the work I have to do. Firstly, let's like just be honest. Like for many people, and usually women, there's like a lot of work, an actual, like not the inner work, not holy work, not spiritual work, just work, right? You got to get a house ready, you got to cook, you got to do all that. So there's that one part. Can I get all that ready? And then Shoshana says on another level than that, then there's the spiritual work. So it can feel like, right? It can feel like that because I don't know what you mean exactly, but I could hear in that like a sense of being overwhelmed, right? What other gut feelings do people have? Anne says, if I'm honest, I always got tshuva to do, right? Yeah, every day.
I think, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think that what it does for me is it's time for review. And I go through things I probably should have been reviewing during the year and knowing I have amends to make and where I can be better. And it's important to me. I do this every year.
Okay, and is that an or is that something else?
Is it an or what?
Is it that a feeling of dread, a feeling of overwhelming? Is it a feeling of contentment? What is it? Where does it?
A feeling of necessity that I need to do it. It's important to do.
So
And I probably wouldn't do it if the holidays weren't coming.
Yeah, I appreciate that because if it's a necessity, I could feel it. It depends on the year, right? Some years I could be dreadful. Some years I could be excited about it, right? But I'm gonna have to do it. By the way, the rabbi stuck this right in the middle of our life every year for this purpose, because if it wasn't there, we might not do it, right? To really set us in focus. All right, any last thoughts about that? Like, where does it live? Are you ready for it? Are you excited for it? Do you want to do it? Do you say oy vavoy?
Well, this year it feels like, we're still starting again with trying to move out of isolation and into where people are. So it feels like a really good time to evaluate and make sure that we're stepping forward right now that we're being with people again.
Yeah, maybe we can actually take some of the things we learned by some of the good things we learned from slowing down and our lives becoming a little smaller, the circles, and apply them. I mean, I think that's probably possible. Patrick said in the chat that there's a reluctance to this return. I think that's true, right? I think that people do have a reluctance to. I think it's not a natural feeling for most of us to want to look at the parts where we're a little bit schmutzy, right? Is that a good technical word? Where our souls are schmutzed up a little bit. Like that's not always easy to do and not fun. Yeah. So before we get into the text, I have just one more thing. So what gets in the way?
Life.
Right.
I mean, what gets in the way of the actual doing the tshuva?
Our egos.
Who said ego? Sherry?
I did. Look, it's hard to take time to really dig inside, right? And go, where did I not live up? Where did I make mistakes? What do I have to own? But I think when we do that work, we actually come out better on the other side, so, but it's hard.
Yeah, so there is a part about ego, right? There is a part where it's just hard. It is, right? So any other things get in the way for you?
Yeah, for me, it's the beginning of a whole mess of yard sites. It means that I'm remembering more closely than normal all the family that I have lost. It starts with Rosh Hashanah and it ends with Thanksgiving, and it's like every week through that period. So it's not always for me the happiest time to start, and I have to force myself to think about what they believed I could do and what I want to do to make the memories proud. So it's a little difficult for me.
Yeah, right. It sounds you sound like a Hasidic story, Margie. Like Rosh Hashanah starts and when it starts and ends in Thanksgiving. Like it just keeps going and going and going and going. And I want to thank you for bringing up something, right? You said like this doesn't necessarily stop this process of tshuva, especially in interpersonal relationships when someone's no longer in the world, right? They're not physically in the world, right? There's still stuff that goes on between us, right? And depending on the year and what's going on and how I've grown and changed and learned, I might have a different kind of tshuva to do this time, right? One of the things I do want to say to you is I don't believe this time of year is supposed to be about self-flagellation. You're just supposed to beat yourself up for all the warts, right? You're supposed to beat yourself up for every place that you fell short. I also think part of cheshbon nefesh, part of taking accounting of your soul, is also celebrating your successes. Like maybe you actually did some things. Like last year, you showed up at Rosh Hashanah, right wherever your heart was, and then you said, "I want to be more like that." And maybe you actually did some. So those ones you should be not just pounding your chest, right? You should be like patting yourself on the back. And this year on Yom Kippur, God willing, when we're in the sanctuary, I'm gonna share with you Rabbi Avi Weiss from Chovevei, the yeshiva in New York, wrote a positive Ashamnu, right? So when we do the Ashamnu Bagad, right? He does Ahavnu, like we've loved and we've done this. It's not true that we're just a big mess, right? Like we have moments when we're less good, but there we also have some good. So one of the things I'd like to invite you to do this year is that tshuva, as we enter this process of tshuva, and Rambam's going to show us kind of some steps that we need to do and how we think about a repair of an interpersonal relationship. But there's two sides. One is the places where I have fallen short, right? The other kind of tshuva is all the places where I didn't express gratitude properly. So if somebody was important in your life this year, if somebody showed up in a way that was really meaningful and you haven't explicitly told them, you haven't said, hey, and this time you showed up like this and that really meant something for me like this, that is part of tshuva too. It's not saying sorry, but it's just not saying thank you properly, or at least acknowledging or appreciating gratitude. And so there's a lot of really sweet, good parts of that can grow ourselves and our souls, and our humanity can expand. We just take the time to really focus and do those things. So let's look at some Rambam, okay? If I can find him. It's just been around for a few while. So can you see that? Whenever I share my screen, I always lose you, or I get the screen, or I lose you. One of the two. I don't know how to always do this right. I can see 4 of you now. Let's see if I can see more of you. That looks better. Just move you around so I can see the text and you. All right, this is the Mishneh Torah, Rambam's Laws of Tshuva. Everybody know who the Rambam is, right? 12th century Spain, born in Spain, fled to Morocco, went to Egypt, became the greatest of the greatest by the time he was like 20 years old. Really, he was everything. He in some of his books he talks about the wise people who like get the world different, and I'm pretty sure mostly he's just talking about himself. Like there's no other wise people as him. And you know he has chutzpah because he names his book the Mishneh Torah, which is the second Torah. That's what he named his book, is the second Torah, which is crazy. Like who gets to name your book the second Torah? But he did. And he was brilliant. So let's start. So here's his first line. When we go into the laws of tshuva, he says, Kol ha-mitzvot shebetorah, ben oseh, ben lo ta'aseh, im avar adam al achat mehem, ben bezadon, ben b'shgaga, v'sheyaseh tshuva, v'yashuv מחטאו, חייב להתוודות לפני האל ברוך הוא. He says all of the commandments in the Torah, whether they're an oseh or a lo oseh, do you know that language? Oseh and lo oseh. Oseh is a positive, do this. Lo oseh is don't do that. So, right, whether they're light your candles at this time or don't wear shatnez, whatever, right, a do or a don't. Whether they're positive or whether they're negative, if a person transgressed any one of them, whether this person did so intentionally or whether she did so unintentionally, when she repents and returns from sinning, is obligated to confess them before God. Okay, so let's just say something in English now. Can someone say what he said? Make sure we got it.
Well, what I'm picking up is that is the unintentionality and the intention. It doesn't matter if you transgressed purposefully or not purposefully. Every single commandment has to be reviewed and
good.
You have to repent.
Right, good. So the purposely and intentionally or unintentionally, let's unpack that a bit. It could be that you don't actually know that it's a mitzvah. Like you don't have any knowledge at all that it was a thing I was supposed to do or not do. That's in the tradition, that's shkaga. That's like I'm in like a cloud, you know. I don't know. I can't even really be held accountable because I didn't know enough to be held accountable. But zadon means I know the rule, and the intentional is I know that this was a rule, and I know that I didn't do it, right? So whether you had full intentionality or whether you were like completely lost and you transgress some, you're saying, I like how you said it, there's an accounting of each and every mitzvah. And then what does he add here? But when he says he's obligated to confess before God, I'll just say one thing about my translations. Gender-wise, I just mix up all the pronouns because it's not about gender at all, and it's all written in male gender. So it gets confusing sometimes for me, even when I reread what I wrote. But just know that it's not about gender; it's a person. The person did this thing, right? So what does he add when he says you have to confess them?
Out loud.
Out loud. I have to say it out loud, right? So chayav lehidvadot lifnei ha'el baruch hu. I have to do it. I have to say this thing out loud. What would that sound like that I say it out loud?
You acknowledge what it. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
I said that would be an intentional acknowledgement. You don't say anything, you don't say things without actually intending to, well, you can say unintended things, but you don't say something to God without intending to say something to God.
Right. So look, Daniel's saying, look, he's putting it in God language too, right? Which is upping the ante of your intentionality, because you're going to hopefully show up before God different than you would before, just rolling out of bed. And then I need to say this thing out loud means I need to think ahead of time because I got to get my thoughts together. I got to know exactly what I'm saying, right? That kind of stuff. And he says here, just at the end, he says, Devidui dvarim, right? And by the way, this is a positive command, mitzvah, to do this. The mitzvah to say it, and Devidui dvarim means this confession has to be verbal, has to be out loud. I have to say it, right? I have to say it. So we between us and God, there's two kinds of relationships. There's one between me and my people, and one between me and God. So how do I do my vidui b'dvarim between me and God? I do that because we're going to stand in prayer and say a lot of prayers. Right? We're going to say we did this and we did this and we did this and we did. I mean, we kind of go A to Z, like we just say them all, right? So we really kind of do this confession, this verbal confession through our liturgy. This is what it does. The ones between me and God. Trudy had her hand up.
Is the confession also to the person it's a double confession, one to God, one you say, and what is the other to the person that you need to make amends with? So is that considered a confession also?
Yes, right. So it doesn't tell me in that first Rambam if what he's talking about is what between me and God or between me and another human. He's saying any place I fell short with any of these things, I have to make a confession. So the ones between me and God, I have to say out loud. Which like, why wouldn't it be enough for me just to think like, hey God, I really don't fell short and I wish I wouldn't have. Why is it not okay for me just to think it?
Because words are powerful.
In our tradition, words are everything, right? I mean, words created the whole world, right? God speaks and the world comes into creation. So we think that there is a power, like they actually become tangible in ways when I speak them out loud. Trudy's question is a good one. Like, okay, like, so if you just told me that we do this through our liturgy when we get up and we say all these prayers for all those hours that day, but what about the other people? What about everyone else, right? And what does that look like? And he's going to lay some of that out for us, Trudy. He's going to show us some of that. Any questions or comments or concerns? Anything you're thinking about? Okay, let's go. Does someone want to read the next one? This is, I jumped a lot. I mean, I just picked selections because some of it's talking about what he talks about in this section is, on Yom Kippur, we get the 2 goats and the high priest puts the sins on the goats and sends one to Azazel. That's a curse word in Hebrew. Azazel. The sin-eating demon, I didn't bring you any of that, right? I wanted to focus on this stuff. So anyone want to read this one through 4?
Pauline will,
Thank you, Pauline.
if I unmute, I think.
You're there. Oh, no, now you're muted.
Anyone who confesses verbally and does not commit in her heart to abandon the improper action, this is like a person who immerses while holding an unclean creature in his hand, so that the bath is not effective until he sends away the unclean creature. And so it says, one who admits and abandons is given mercy, and she must specify the sin, as it says, this nation has sinned a great sin and made a golden god for themselves.
Thank you, Pauline. All right, so we know a little bit more about confessing now, right? So when I confess, I have to say it out loud, and then what does he add now?
Well, you have to stop doing it.
So I have to have some internal commitment. Like, so Daniel added something before. He said, I have to have some awareness that the thing was wrong, right? I gotta know that. I have to admit that I actually did the thing that was wrong. So I can, because if I didn't do those 2 things, there's no way for me to confess anything. I gotta do those, right? And now it says, and I also have to have some intention in my heart, right? I have to, so what's it getting at when he says I actually have to believe that it was wrong? I have to say that it was wrong, and I have to want to not do the thing again, right? I have to want that, because what else could I do? If he didn't add that piece, what could we do?
Do it again.
What's that? Who said that?
I said, the idea is if you're presented with that situation again, you don't do it. And so if you don't do that step, you're in a situation where you potentially would do it again.
So amazing. So Sherry, we have tshuva, and then we have tshuva gemura. We have tshuva, which is this realignment and return, and then we have complete realignment and return. And the only way the Rambam says that we can do tshuva gemura is if we fell short, right? We felt bad, we confessed, we made amends, which we're going to get to, and all that kind of stuff. And then I was in the same situation again, and I didn't do it, right? So,
Rabbi,
yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
In the vidui,
Yep.
the person has to confess the sin.
Yes.
Well, if the person's unconscious, the final vidui, can someone say that in his stead?
Yeah. So you're talking about the vidui at the end of our life, right?
Yes.
If you look at those texts, you'll see that there's one that I say when I'm actually lucid, when I can do it for myself, I say this final vidui. By the way, the final vidui is only final until it's not final until it's final, meaning I could say my final vidui many times, right? Like, and in fact, if I said a very traditional prayer before going to sleep, I would be saying it every night, right? I'd be saying this vidui every single night. And then if you look, what's the proper way?
But then we say when we get up, another prayer.
Yeah,
So
we keep saying them, right? We keep saying them. So, but the vidui at the end of life, when I say it for someone else, is slightly different. It's more of like a bakasha, it's like a request or a hope, right, for this person, because I can't really do it for them exactly. I can frame it, but I can't really do it. So, like, what does he say? I can't just say, hey, that, like, so I cut people off and humiliated them in a meeting, and I can't just say, hey, sorry for that because I cut you off, right? That's not tshuva. Unless I really felt bad and I don't want to do it. I didn't mean to do it. I don't want to do it again, right? Even though I might do it again, I don't want to do it again. If you don't have a pure heart, well, somebody made a noise when you read this thing about immersing in a mikveh with an unclean creature. It's fun in Hebrew. It says, like the immersion isn't effective because you got in with the sheretz, the tratzim. You got in with the sheretz, so you have like a creepy animal with you, which makes me impure or unclean, and then I'm in the mikveh. That makes no sense, right? That makes no sense that I could do that. All right, so I have to, we learned a couple things. One, I have to really mean it in my heart. I have to say it out loud. I have to acknowledge what the thing was. I have to know that it was like I transgressed the thing. And then he says here, and you have to specify the sin. Because, and he learns that out of Exodus because it says the nation sinned a great sin. Don't we know what that is? Of course we know what that is. It's right in the narrative, and yet it still says by making a golden calf, right? It gives us the specific thing that they did, and so too with us. So if I'm going to stand before God or I'm going to stand before another person, I have to have this kind of mentality. I have to know it was wrong. I have to feel bad about it. I have to never want to do it again. And I have to confess verbally, in words, the actual thing that I did. Right? Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
I always say that, and I don't like when I say that. I mean, do you understand what I said? I don't know if anything makes sense sometimes. So give us an example. Somebody's trying to do it. The Rambam is saying, and you took someone's parking spot. So what does tshuva sound like? Like I could say sorry, hey, sorry. That's not tshuva.
I took your parking spot. I'm sorry that I took your parking spot, and I will not again take your parking spot.
Right? So Daniel did something way better than me, right? One, he said, I took your parking spot. I just said, hey, sorry, right? Hey, sorry, right? And express remorse for that thing, and an intention to say, like, I won't do that again, right? So that's really much different. Well, you tell me, is it different? Is it, or how is it different than just saying, hey, sorry, Daniel?
There's a story that people tell about in school that one student hurts another, and the teacher tells the student to apologize, and the first student says, "I'm sorry that you're hurt."
Yeah,
and leaves out his own acknowledgement of his own agency in the process.
Yeah, that's there's that passive way that we talk,
yeah.
Right? You say, I'm sorry that you were hurt by this, right? Like, you shouldn't be so petty. It's like there's some weird stuff implied in it. But I just want to see if we can glean out, like, what's the quality of the difference between the two statements?
Isn't there another step as well?
Yeah.
A step of restitution.
Yeah,
so,
it's coming up.
I identify what I did wrong. I took your parking spot. I have regret that I took your parking spot.
Yeah.
What can I do to make it better?
Yeah, you're just Rambam a few chapters later is going to show us. He's going to say exactly, I got to make reparations, right? It says lefayes, I have to calm your being, your soul. I have to do something to bring whatever ill thing I created in you, feeling, thoughts, whatever. Maybe it's really moving my car, right? In this situation, but I have to do something more, right? So so when someone posts on Facebook and they say, hey, if I did anything to you this year, please forgive me because it's Rosh Hashanah. Like, is that tshuva?
No.
Right. So it's
No.
not tshuva, and it's not tshuva. Why is it not tshuva?
Because it's not specific.
Not specific. It didn't say, hey, Liz, on this day I did this thing and I feel so bad. And right, I've been carrying this and I should have said sorry to you so long ago. Right? It didn't, so it's not specific. I kind of like, I don't know, it bothers me whenever I see that stuff. Because I know what on the one hand, I know what it is and why that's perhaps appropriate this time of year. On another hand, it seems a little cheap to me. So let's move back to the Rambam. So we learned a few things. I have to know, I have to admit, I have to confess out loud, I have to know that it was wrong, I have to take responsibility, I have to say it out loud, I have to give details. I have to give details for that stuff. Okay, let's look at this one. So this is 2:6, the Mishnah Torah 2:6, and it says, V'shevach gadol l'shev sheyitvadeh barabim ויודיע פשעיו להם, ומגלה עבירות שבו, שבינו לבין חברו לאחרים, ואומר להם, אומנם חטאתי לפלוני ועשיתי לו כך וכך. It says, it is very praiseworthy for the person to confess this confession in public and disclose his shortcomings to a group of people and reveal these interpersonal things that he has done. And they should say, you know, I did this thing to so-and-so, and I did such and such to that other person. But today I behold, like I return, I feel so bad about it and I want to make it right. But anyone who is prideful and does not disclose, but rather hides her sins, her tshuva is not complete. As it says, one who covers his transgression shall not prosper. All right, what's this tshuva look like?
Well, that's another level of difficulty. I mean, it's one thing to do privately and have a conversation privately, but to openly tell everybody what you did is one step harder.
Well, I agree with you, right? I mean, one, I want to say probably what he means here is if I transgress something in public, if I did something to humiliate you in public, Anne, then I also need to fix that in public, right?
Yeah.
If it was me and you, just me and you, I'd probably fix that me and you. But if we were in a meeting, together and I did blah, 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 right? Then I might.
That makes more sense because obviously if you hurt somebody in public, you have to clear it in public. So especially if it's their name involved.
So let's take it the other side that you said is so hard. What would that sound like? Right, that would sound like, you know, I was in Fred Meyer the other day and I saw Daniel and I kind of drove my car a little fast around the corner and got to this spot that he was waiting for and I just parked in it. I just took his spot and I would just tell people that I did it. And I was in a hurry. I was thinking about something. I was like, he has more time than me. And then I felt bad about it. And then I went to him and I said, hey, Daniel, like I would talk this way in public. I would tell people I had this moment where I wasn't so good. And then, but then, you know, I felt bad and I talked to him and right. But we would like, why would I do this? What would happen to our culture, to our community, if people actually could hold up their shortcomings and their tshuva, right? As opposed to just hide it. He's worried that we're going to hide it.
Wouldn't we be more compassionate with one another?
Would we be more compassionate, or would we just be judgmental to each other and say, oh, that guy, he drives terrible and he's so mean to Daniel, right? What would you say? What do you think? Why does he want me to do this in public?
Well, it will make you think harder the next time you see Daniel in a parking space, because you're like, oh my God, I'm going to have to tell people that I did this. I'm going to have to show my selfishness to everybody.
How likely, let's say that I want to, I'm going to make a commitment to myself in this new year that somebody was saying that we might even like take into account our spiritual lives and say, I am gonna find a way to meditate this year. That's what I'm gonna do, right? That's gonna be a part of my spiritual journey, and I'm gonna meditate. And I go on Yom Kippur and I say out loud, when everybody's talking, I say to God, I'm gonna show up and try to connect to God. Great. And now it's out and I've said it. What's the difference between that and to me to tell all of you that my goal this year is to meditate and really focus, give time to realign myself every day. Tshuva going to be a part of my everyday this coming year. And now all you people know that that's my goal. What's the difference?
Difference is you'll be held accountable.
I'll be held accountable, right?
By everyone around you who heard you. And because those kinds of words are so incredibly powerful, that those people who are not completely embarrassed in themselves about not doing such incredibly difficult work, okay, because we all know it's the work that needs to be done, and being that open-hearted is incredibly difficult. And if people are not totally on the whole process of tshuva for the world, they can be, afraid of you, and they can pull away from you, at which point, if you know that they're pulling away from you, Rabbi, and you've admitted this, and you're the leader of the community, you can reach and see those people who are struggling and maybe tend them a little differently.
Yeah.
So anyway, I live in a community. That's something I try to do. I don't succeed in doing it all the time, but I try.
Right. There is
Rabbi, that sets up a Lashon Hara conflict, potentially. Both of the examples you just gave. The one with Daniel in the parking lot, if you do that and you pronounce that publicly, maybe Daniel didn't want to have everyone know that he was in the parking lot or going to Fred Meyer. And so you're setting up a Lashon Hara thing rather than just doing it privately with him and then not doing it the next time or finding another parking space for him. And the second one is you're also setting up potentially Lashon Hara, where if someone says, here's what I'm going to do this year publicly, and then they don't do it, that could be the cause for gossip about them. See, Mr. Big Shot said he was going to do this and that, and then he didn't do it. So I think there's a tension there both ways.
Okay, so I appreciate your carefulness, Marshall. You're right, that in the parking lot space, and I was talking, and without Daniel's permission, it would sound like I cut this guy off in the parking lot. I wouldn't use his name, right? I would just say I did this to this person, and that would be a better way to do it. In the second one, the Lashon Hara is not, it's not a Lashon Hara if something's public. Like if I put it out in the world to say this year I want to, or whatever it might be, and someone holds me accountable, that's not Lashon Hara. If someone chooses to do what Marshall said, that's kind of on them actually, and not on me, right? That's on however they're processing this piece. But it is true, the first one, like I wouldn't do that without Daniel's permission, or it could lead us to a place that we don't want to be in. It could cause another thing, right? Could cause another thing.
I have another example.
Yeah.
What happens if I'll give you an example. Somebody called you on your cell phone and you really didn't want to talk to them. And
Mhm.
so you didn't answer the phone. And then the next day when you're ready to talk to them, you call them and say, oh, I didn't see your message,
Mhm.
which really is a lie. Now,
Mhm.
if you confess that to them, then you risk they're getting angry with you or not trusting you anymore or whatever. So you can create a worse situation. If they didn't know about it and it didn't bother them, why do you have to go tell them the truth?
Well, can I try?
Yeah, you can try.
Okay, so this is what I would want to try, Margie, is I would want to try to share with them that I was not ready to speak to them. I would try to just be real about that and say, but I am ready now. Okay, I'm ready now. I would open the conversation and I would say what was true about it, because they may be like feeling like you've just rejected them and their feelings are hurt because you don't answer, and everybody's got their phones by them now, you know, everybody does. And
but in my situation, I did talk to them. I did call them, but it wasn't at the time that they called me.
Right.
So Margie, there's always two parts to it, right? And Marcia was pointing to some of this. There's two sides, because there's what will happen to them, and there's also what's happening inside of you. Like, so why lie? Why say I didn't see your call? Because you don't want to tell them I didn't want to talk to you, right? Like, I saw your name and I just said, nope, I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not going to do that. Yeah, that probably would just be hurtful to them. But if what Liz is saying is to say, look, what would happen if how we spoke came from a heart space, and say, like, if you really feel bad about it, you would say, I saw your call, right? And I was not in a right mental space to answer, but you're really important to me, and I'm calling now, and I feel really bad about that, right? And I feel really bad about that, and I just want you to know, like, right, that's like, depends on the level of your relationship with them. But if that was I think that would probably be okay, right? It'd probably be okay, but you'd have to add a lot of words, not just, I didn't see your call, right? You'd have to add more details into the thing. And that's what Liz is pointing to, like, to say something else that comes out of a heart space. It's complicated, all this stuff, right? And how to do it well is like an art. But here in this section of the Rambam, right, we get this idea that there's some power when I do it verbally, and he's worried that I'm gonna hide it, like I'm gonna act like I'm perfect, I never fell short, I didn't do anything, or I don't know, right? Something like that. Let's keep going with him. So would someone want to do this one, 2:11 and 12?
Teshuvah and Yom Kippur only atone for transgression between humans and God, such as one who eats a forbidden food or has a forbidden sexual relationship, etc. But transgressions between a person and their fellow, such as hurting their fellow or cursing their fellow or stealing from them, those are never forgiven until they give their fellow what is owed them and their fellow is appeased. Even if they return the money they owed, they must appease them and ask them to forgive them, even if only perturbed their fellow verbally. They must make amends and meet with them until they are forgiven. Or
Liz,
they
forgive Liz, them. I'm going to change all the pronouns to they. That was much better than mine. All right, so now he's telling us something about these two kinds of sin, ben adam lemakom and ben adam lechavero. So any sins, transgressions between me and God, between me and makom, that can, Yom Kippur and Teshuvah can fix those, right? But what about the ones between me and another person? Ben Adam lechavero, the ones between me and my fellow. What about those ones?
We have to keep going until they are appeased. We have to keep.
Forever. He says forever.
It sounds like forever. It does. It sounds like it's forever.
He says they're forever. They are forever. They do not get fixed. No amount of fasting can fix it. No amount of beating my chest for a shamnu can fix it. No amount of praying to God can fix it. No, nothing, right? Once I've done it, I'm accountable for the thing.
Right. And if you cannot be forgiven, you stay in that relationship with that person where they continuously refuse.
Well, we're going to get there. Thanks, Liz, because he's going to bring us. He's going to bring us there. But I'm glad that you've lifted the tension in it. Like, how am I supposed to live with these people? Like it just stays. Nikki, is that you waving? Oh, we don't hear you.
Isn't there an obligation on the person who is being asked for forgiven to forgive? Isn't there an obligation on the other side as well?
Yes, you'll see it. It's coming up, right? It's gonna make you use this. The Rambam uses this really beautiful language about our pure Jewish hearts. We easily forgive everyone because of our pure Jewish hearts. Like, I want that to be really true, right? I really want that to be true. But we also have those other texts that says we're stiff-necked and stubborn and all that kind of stuff. But yes, Nikki, yes, and yes, Liz, there is something that says there's a responsibility on the other side. There's a responsibility on the other side, but their responsibility doesn't kick in until I've done a whole bunch of stuff, right? Like, so he's going to focus on me first. Like, what are those things that I got to do? So, let's unpack it just a tiny bit. We've already said some of these things, but something's happened between me and my fellow. It says, one, I got to make restitution, right? If I owe you something, if I took something, if there's a thing involved, I got to fix the thing. I got to do that. I got to do that thing. And then once I've given the money back, right? I've returned the money. It says I have to appease and I have to ask for forgiveness. What is that?
Appease and ask for forgiveness. Return the money, appease, ask for forgiveness.
And I broke your fence, and I fixed the fence, I paid, I got it all fixed, and now I still got to appease and ask for forgiveness. What is it?
Because there are still raw feelings out there. It's not enough just to return what was, robbed. It's not enough just to do that. You have to do more. That's why it says in the Torah, you return what was stolen and add a fifth.
Right?
Right.
So that's still compensation, right?
Sure.
I think this appeasement's compensation.
It's a spirit.
Okay. So not the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law, or the depth of something between us, something in a relationship. Yeah. Daniel, go ahead.
We're in 2:11 and 2:12. So we've read the same chapter here, and we're building from simple to more complex. Yes. So when we're saying now that we're adding the element of restitution, we're saying that must be done, and then we're ready for these things, the simpler things that we've already discussed in this chapter. Until we get this new thing that we're just adding in these verses, we're not ready yet to get down to the baser, simpler aspects that we've already discussed.
So Rambam likes to think this way, and he writes this way. He writes kind of very linearly and logically like that. But I think we could push him here, right? Because I'm being serious. What does it mean to appease them? And he doesn't say to say sorry. He says to ask them for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Right. So somebody said it very well earlier about what the appeasing could sound like. Because I don't know. I want it in like 3D. I want to know how to say it. So how do I say it to someone, or how do I appease them? What do I do?
Can we say we are no longer there? Let's move forward together. I mean, appeasing, it's like leave the past in the past.
That
and let's
phrase
move
doesn't
on.
work if you haven't gotten forgiveness yet. That just pokes them.
So I don't think that's
Right,
what
but
it
the
is.
appeasing is, okay, so appeasing is like soothing, right? Comforting.
Yeah. It's like,
and-
it's like,
and-
remember I said it's like calming something in them. I have to do something. Like,
Well, I need an app for easing. I need an app.
yeah. So that would be great if we had a Chuva
Easy.
app. Liz, we can make a Chuva app and we'll just press the button and it'll say all the right
okay,
words and
all
all
right,
the
this is
exactly
it.
the right way. So exactly they can understand exactly what my intention is, and then I won't have to find the words.
Well,
Because it's hard to find the
fortune.
words. That's why I'm asking us to spell it out. Like, what would it sound like? Terry, maybe you were the one that said it beautifully earlier. Yes.
I don't know, but in my mind, it's the other person has to leave this encounter satisfied. It's not about what we think, it's about how they feel. And so I don't know that I could come up with a sentence, but whatever that sentence would have to be something that matters to the other person for them to feel satisfied. And
So amazing. And maybe Sharon said it earlier. But this is kind of what you were getting to earlier, right, Sharon? To say,
I think so.
I want you to feel where does all the power lie in this encounter?
On the person who you're asking to forgive you.
Yes, all the power is in this person that I'm asking to forgive me. So if I say I'm sorry, right? Where does all the power lie? With me. Like if you could take it or leave it, but I've done my part. I've said sorry, right? But when I put it into your court to say, please forgive me, all the power lies in there. And Sherry's right to say, I have to worry about their experience. And does whatever I have done or said, does it count in their world? Not my world, right? Does it do something in their world that would calm them, right? That would appease them? Maybe it was you, Sharon, earlier that just said, like something simple, like, is there anything I can do? I've already paid you the money back, right? I feel like crap inside. I feel terrible inside. I don't want this to be between it. Like I gotta say more words, right? I gotta say something to say, is there anything that I can do that's gonna help the situation get better, right?
Right. And it might be something that you could do now. And maybe that answer, I think, as Liz was saying, is no, not yet. And I think that, with children, it's always a little bit simpler to observe and to experience that sense of appeasement, because you can actually ask them, how do you feel now? Are you feeling better? Or look at that person's face. Or do we feel like giving each other a hug right now? And do we want to play together again? And as adults, I think that we have to kind of move aside, kind of swim through a lot of the barriers that we have to ask ourselves, how do I feel now that I have been apologized to and that I've said, I forgive you? Do I really feel like giving that person a hug in my heart?
Right. So one of the things I want to echo that you said, Sharon, is I'm not sure you can't do that with adults. That's what I just spent a year doing in the hospital, right? I mean,
you can,
asking
for sure.
a direct question, like, how do you feel? Like,
how do you feel?
Right? I could do that. I could say, I know what I feel. I know I feel terrible inside, but I'm not in your shoes, right? And I know I caused this, and I would do anything I could to take it away, and I can't. It happened, But I want you to know that this, and this, right? And I respect you and I care about you, and I'm just wondering how you're feeling through all this, right? You could actually do that with someone. You could say something like that. That's scary too, because you could be rejected, and you have to be vulnerable, and you have to do all that stuff. But what I think the Rambam is pointing us to, what Sherry said, and Sharon was saying, Daniel was saying, Liz was saying, is that like the powers in their world. Like I gotta go. When I think about how we communicate as people, I think all of us live in our own countries, right? We all have our own cultures and we have our own languages. So Anne speaks Swahili and I speak Gaelic. I don't know any Swahili. I have to go over this bridge into her land and I have to say, what does that mean in your world? I have to really try to understand what it means in her world, and it's not mine. So I won't know unless I ask, right? I will never know. But she'll give me a tour. I'll say, can you take me through the tshuva part of your land? And she will. She'll tell me about what it looks like, and I'll get a better sense. And then I got a shot to appease you, right? I got a shot. Yeah. And
is there any hints in the Hebrew for whatever the Hebrew is for appease? I don't know what the word is.
it's lefayes, I believe here, if I remember right. Let's see. Oh, this one actually says lerotzoto. That's from rotze, his desires, his wants.
Desires?
His want, yeah.
Want?
In another place, it always says lefayes, so I'm surprised, and I should have read that more carefully. Retzotos from rotze. Rotze is to want. I want ice cream, and rotze glida, right? I want. It's whatever they're. Yeah, I probably the only way I can know that is to ask you, right? For sure.
You have to try to find out what it is that they want. You have to suss that out.
And then try to do it, right?
Right.
Yeah, figure it out and then try to do it. So I gave you the right. So now, Daniel, when you go from like simple to complicated or complicated to simple, when you're saying I have to have knowledge that I did something wrong, that I have to feel bad about it, I have to confess the thing out loud, I have to do that thing with detail, I have to make reparations, right? So if I hurt something or broke something, I gotta fix that. Then I gotta understand your world, and then I gotta do something to try to make that world better, to fix that world. And then I gotta try, when I'm in a similar situation, I gotta commit really to, when I'm in a similar situation with you or with another person, to never do that thing again. That's all. It's really simple. That's all we gotta do, right? I mean, it takes us to be awake, right? It takes us to be aware. It means that you have to be careful, right? And I think often, at least I am not always careful, and then you know, we can fall short, all kinds of things. But if we care about the quality of the relationship, this is what he's saying that I have to do. I think we're gonna go for like 15 more minutes. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
If you need to leave, you'll leave, and I have no offense will be taken. So let's look at, I think I only have 2 left. All right, so let's look at this one. So if his fellow does not wish to forgive him, this is what Mickey was saying, what someone else was saying, I forget who said, sorry. If his fellow does not wish to forgive him, he should bring a line of 3 or 4 people who are friends with him, and they will approach him and ask forgiveness from him. What does that mean? So I've done all that work that we just talked about, all of it. And I said, Daniel, please forgive me. And Daniel says, no. Now what am I supposed to do?
Bring 3 people.
Now I bring Leslie, and I bring Annette, I bring Ann, and I say, we're gonna go have lunch with Daniel. And then I have to do all this thing again in front of people, and then say, hey, please forgive me.
3rd time?
Could you imagine doing this?
You have witnesses.
Can you play it out? Can you play it out? Like, could you really imagine doing this? Like, bring 3 or 4 inner circle people that are all invested in, you know, we're all intertwined. Our relationships are intertwined. I'm supposed to bring them, and then we go and gang up on Daniel, and we say, please forgive him, Daniel. Please forgive him. Right? And Daniel's shaking his head. Why are you shaking your head?
Apparently, I'm still offended. If I wouldn't expect appreciate your apology in front of friends.
It's a funny thing. Like, this one always trips me up a tiny bit, because one is Shoshana, did you say you have witnesses? Somebody
Yes,
said you have witnesses.
You have witnesses, yes.
Right? Does it change the quality of the interaction when you and I can't fix it ourselves? Like, we bring in, it's arbitration or something. We bring in a mediator. And we say, let's sit and have somebody that can say, wait, let's slow down. Gary, did you hear Daniel said X, Y, and Z? And before I start defending myself, just slow down, just like, right? So maybe there's a chance for some kind of
mediation.
Yeah, so it's like a mediators, bring in other, but these people gotta love you and they gotta care about both of you. They gotta do that. Yeah, Daniel.
In the previous section, we're talking about we were talking about making things right in the world of the person who's been wronged.
Yeah.
And
Oh, we
if
can-
if I've wronged, let's flip it over because the English is easier. If I've wronged you and I've somehow made my lame attempt at an apology, and I'm apologizing for the wrong thing. I'm apologizing not for having wronged you, but I'm apologizing for something slightly left or right of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not addressing the true issue.
Mm-hmm.
When we bring this before witnesses, this is an opportunity for somebody else to observe the situation and say, yeah, Daniel, I realize you're sorry, but you're not sorry for what you actually did. You're sorry because Daniel's a jerk. You're not sorry because you've wronged Gary.
Right. So
That's the thing.
I want to hold that up, Daniel. I want to hold it up to say sometimes it takes an outsider, like with good intentions, with a pure heart, to say it doesn't really seem like you're hearing each other, right? All of this Cuba stuff is really built in kind of relationships of care. Like these are not like these are people that you really care what like the quality of your relationship is. And so Daniel, when you said at the beginning, like my apology that was kind of, no, this is really thought out. Like you got to do a lot of work to even get to this spot. How much would I have to prepare in order to even show up and then try to appease you and make it right and confess and right? I gotta go a lot here. And so
but my ego could still mislead me, and I could still be apologizing for something that is not the way I hurt you.
It totally could. Or I could just hold grudges, right? I mean, I love children. Sharon said about children, but I love children because they're like emotions serve them, right? So they're like angry at you when it serves them to be angry at you, and then it's time to play, and then they just play, like, because it doesn't serve them anymore to be angry at you, but us most of the time, at least me often, right? Like my feelings get hurt and I start to go into other places, and it's I don't know. I'm not always as flexible as and focused on the biggest picture, and so I think that can trip us up. In this one, right? Maybe in front of other people, when it's just me and Daniel, if it's just me and another person, maybe my defense to stay up and I can just keep fighting. But in front of other people, like maybe they'll soften. Maybe I won't want to look like a jerk in front of them. Maybe they'll say, look, Daniel did all this stuff and he really feels terrible and he's been trying so hard and he cares about your relationship, and you're just hurt. Like now you're being hurtful. You know what I mean? There's a way that maybe it works out that way if we can't figure it out just between us. Karen, did you have something? I saw it in your
I'm
eyebrow.
wondering, I'm wondering if there's a level of accountability also for both sides, and that the idea that of witnesses, as Roshana said, you know, if the person decides that I cannot be forgiven, those who are with us are going to observe that I've done everything that I can. Mm-hmm. And you know, in terms of like the Lashon Hara that might be associated with, well, what on earth did she do in order to offend her so much? It must have been blah, blah, blah. You know, that there's like, well, there's this other barrier that's in place, and that could be helpful and supportive for the person who has done the wrong thing and is truly trying to apologize.
So I want to echo that too, right? Because on one way, for our community-wise, there can be some healing that comes out of that. But I want to say, like, for me, like, what happens when I'm really trying the best that I can to do tshuva and somebody just won't? Like, people, they don't, right? They don't have to. But I've shown in front of other people, like, I've gone through all these extents to try to make this better, and other humans have seen that I've really tried. I think something changes in me, right? When it's just not me by myself thinking I did it, but I have these people that said, I saw that you tried. I think that helps somehow in the, in the side of the wrongdoer. At some point when you've done all the work, I think it helps. Right? I think it helps you to have some calm inside, because we're not perfect and we're not gonna be perfect. Like, we're gonna fall short. So to not internalize, like, there's a huge difference, right, Sharon, of saying I made a mistake or I'm a mistake, right? And that feeling that says, like, I'm a mess up versus I messed up this one thing, that's different. And I think this part can help shift it sometimes, right? I think it can help shift it. I'm just being conscious of time, and let's finish these Rambams and then we'll close up for a second. So we're supposed to bring friends, we're supposed to approach him and ask for forgiveness from him. If this person does not give in to them, she should bring people a second time and a third time. So now we have like 3 lunch dates, all right? We've had a big party a bunch of times to say, we got to make this right. And if the person still does not give in, they should leave that person alone, and that person who did not forgive becomes the sinner, right? But if it's your teacher or your parent, you must come and go even 1,000 times until the person forgives it. If it's your rabbi, you should come and go 1,000 times until you forgive them. But it's forbidden for a person to be, why? Because it's forbidden for a person to be cruel and not make amends. Instead, a person should get appeased easily and get angry slowly. And at the moment when the sinner asks for forgiveness, forgive with a whole heart and a desirous soul. And even if she pained him and sinned against him many times, you should not take revenge or hold a grudge, because this is the way of the children of Israel and their correct hearts and their libam hanachon.
Rabbi,
Rabbi,
I have a
Rabbi?
question now.
Well, yes, friends. Let's go with Phil. Phil, go ahead.
You have a shofar here, so we can hear shofar. It's Elul.
Yeah, I'll blow it for you.
All right.
Shoshana, what are you gonna say?
Well, okay, so here's a question. If the person comes before you 1,000 times and you forgive them, what if you forgive them, but you haven't really forgiven them?
Oh, what is that?
You say that you say, I forgive you, but in your heart, it's not true yet.
Okay. So you remember on the holidays, we're gonna sing that song, Eloha, Slichot, Slach Lanu, Machal Lanu, Kaper Lanu, right? So we have Mechila, we have Slicha, Mechila, and Kapara, right? Slicha is forgiveness. Rav Soloveitchik teaches that Slicha is forgiveness, Mechila is reconciliation, and Kapara is atonement, right? Is atonement. So when someone comes and asks for forgiveness, pure-hearted, is trying, this text says to me that I'm supposed to forgive them, right? And Shoshana is saying to me, yes, I could say I forgive you, but I still got something in me, right? I still got something in me that doesn't feel so good, and I still don't trust that person, and like I'm not sure about them, and right, like all that stuff that really turns on. This we are not we're not like our Christian brothers and sisters where we say I forgive you and that means it's all poofed away. In the Jewish tradition, I can forgive you and you're still 100% accountable for what you did, right? It doesn't poof away. It doesn't. The only poofing away is atonement. Is kapara. That's it. The only one that can give that is God. That's all, right? And mechila, which is reconciliation, is even hard because that's saying that between me and you, Shoshana, between the two of us, like you forgave me, but there's still that thing. There's still that residue that's left between us, but we're gonna work through it. Reconciliation isn't all poofed gone either. It's to say we know that, and so that thing that's between us, right? It could be like a catalyst for a much deeper holy relationship, right? Or it could be something that continues to push us apart. It depends on how open we allow our hearts to be, right? But it doesn't poof away. It doesn't go away. It's there. It's there. So in some ways, when we say quick to forgive, I think most often in my own life and with most people I talk to, somebody did something wrong to them. That person is holding on to the wrong, right? It's still hurting them. And that other person that hurt them, what's going on with them? Are they hurt? No, they're just doing whatever they do, you know? So it's like, you know, I drink poison and then I want the other person to get sick, right? Like there's a way that not forgiving, not letting it go. And when I mean let it go, I don't mean like it's Pollyannish and gone. I don't mean that. It hurts me. That's what it's gonna do. It's gonna hurt, it's gonna poison me. So the way that I like to think about this kind of forgiveness is to say that there is accountability. We do hold people accountable. I just don't need to be the one to do that, right? Like, can you imagine preparing a court case where you wrote out all the things that was there and somebody should be held accountable for this, but then you transfer it to another court and you let them do the thing. So it doesn't eat you, doesn't contain you, it doesn't, right? So every time I get this feeling like, oh, they really should have, I said, oh yeah, but that's in that courtroom over there, in that court. And I don't have to live it. I don't have to live it. So there, our forgiveness is a little bit more complicated, and I can appreciate, like, I can appreciate the integrity and depth that goes into someone that would really do this process. You know what I mean? Like if you saw that someone really could articulate and work hard and feel bad and say, what can I do? Tell me about it. Like, and keep showing up a second time and a third time and bring friends and right to say this can't be, I don't want it to be like this. I don't want this distance between us. Something happens in us. I don't know. Humanity like rubs off on us. Something happens like where it's hard to like keep being close. It's hard, right? It's hard. Now, look, if the person is still sinning the whole time, let's put that on the table. If the person is like being bad and then saying sorry, but then being bad and bad and bad and bad, that's different. That's not this, right? That's not, those people you should stay away from, right? Like, that's not this, right? That's not this. So I hear what you're saying, but we don't have this kind of poof it all away. We just don't, right? God can do that for us, but between us, that's why all of our interactions ultimately matter so much, because we're always creating residue in each other, and it could be great, right? And it can be heartwarming and pull us together, and it could be terrible, right? And it can be terrible. And that's one of the tricky parts of, like, you know, community and being together, right? So, and we often don't take the time to know the other person's world. We don't take the time. We just know like everybody's world from my world, which makes sense, right? But only to me, right? So we get stuck. All right. Anything else on this? I know I kind of moved to this one fast, but the idea, right, is that if somebody really were to do this tshuva, do the process of repentance, of acknowledgement, of confession, of asking for forgiveness, of reparations, of penance on some levels, that one, the tradition would say we should have our hearts open enough to accept that from them. Look at the last text, because this is what Margie started us. Margie says that someone who sins against his fellow, Margie doesn't say that, the Rambam says it. Someone who sins against his fellow and his fellow dies before he can ask him for forgiveness, he should bring 10 people and stand them by his grave and say in front of them, I have sinned against the Lord, God of Israel, and against this certain person, because I did such and such to them. And if she owed him money, she should give it to his heirs. And if they don't know how to find their heirs, she should give it to the court and confess. Okay, what's the last one? How do you understand that one? For today, at least, the last one.
Well, death doesn't absolve you of your responsibilities.
Can you imagine doing that?
No.
What do you think would happen? Like, could you imagine, like, I get a minion and I say, we're gonna go to my grandpa's grave and I got some stuff to get off my chest, right? Doesn't resolve me of responsibility. I still have to make reparations. I still have to, right? So the reason I bring this one is because sometimes we think it's about, well, I do think it's about a continuing relationship. But the part that I worry about and I am also hopeful about is I think these things have a way to spill over into all of our relationships, right? If I have solid, healthy, good, loving caring relationships in one place, I think that spills into my next one and my next one and my next one, my next one. And if I think some things are really broken in one of them, that can also spill through my other relationships. And so Anne said, like, your obligation continues, but also I want to say a chance for some healing continues, right? There's a chance that if you've done all the work to do the right thing, again, something happens in the soul, in the body, in the neshama of the person asking for forgiveness. Something happens. There's a chance that, right, our tradition doesn't say, you did it, you're responsible, live with it forever, right? Yeah, you did it and you're responsible and you can't change it. And there are things to do that can make it better. Like it's not all or nothing in that way, So, so I wanna, as we end, I wanna push us back to where I kind of started, right? So, thinking about tshuva and this month, like I appreciate that we have 40 days, right? It takes a while to get your head in the right place, to know the details that I want to say, how I want to say it, so that the other person could hear me, right? And not be offended more, like you were all worried about, which I think was the right things to be worried about. All of that. And again, I want to say this happens in two ways. Like one way is the way where I've fallen short, and I need to say, ask for apologies for that. And the other way is the ways where I have failed to express my gratitude or appreciation for you, like the things that you did that were positive, and I didn't really acknowledge them. I didn't really tell you the depths of what it meant to me. I didn't really explain, right? And I think there's an obligation on us before we get to Yom Kippur and stand in all of our whites and we in our angelic selves, that we, I think we can stand a little more whole if we do some of the work now, right? That's how I find it for me. So yeah, that's what I bless us to do, is to be brave enough, to be vulnerable enough, to be conscious enough and awake enough to do some of it, right? To do a little bit goes a long way. A little tshuva goes a long way, right? Because I do think it spills through other things. And so I bless us to really have the courage, to the wholeheartedness to do the work this month, and have the trust that we can show up and share these truths with other people, and they'll be accepted in a positive way as intended, right? And if not, you'll be able to manage that too. It'll be okay, right? Any last questions or comments or concerns?
Thank you, Rabbi, for doing
Or
that.
compliments. Who said that? Oh, Marshall and Sherry were so sweet. We had like the best Shabbat dinner ever at their house. And Esty, right, said, I always say questions, comments, or complaints. And she said questions, comments, complaints, or compliments. Yeah, that's nice. It's nice. She added that in there. I liked it.
Ah.
Oh, well, you on the shofar, right? Oh, can I tell you something? I don't know if I should do this. My dog, he goes nuts, but crazy. He's gonna explode as soon as I blow this thing. Like he wants to eat every shofar. He's gonna go crazy. Okay, so just so you know. Okay, ready? He's already looking at me. Okay. Okay.
That was great.
Crazy. And he won't calm down for 5 minutes. He's just gonna go nuts. That's it. There's no more. That's it. It's done.
Rabbi Geller used to soak the shofar in vinegar or something before he blew it. Do you do something to prepare your shofar?
No, but I want to know about it. Look, he wants to eat it.
I soaked mine in sliver bits.
That would be better. You just fill yours up with it and you can just drink it like that, right?
You said you're right.
The wine sack. All right, I'll see you guys, and when I see you, hopefully I'll see you soon. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
A good week to all.
You too. Shavua Tov.
Thank you, Margie.